Okay, so this is a bit of a change for the channel, so I guess some context before we get started, right? So in 2018, we saw a show released that changed the face of children's entertainment forever, and that was Bluey. It's pretty much the Australian Peppa Pig, but less annoying. I mean, George can go to hell, I swear to God, I hate George, but yeah. It's pretty much like Peppa Pig, but it looks better, they're all dogs, and watching an episode doesn't make your brain melt out your ears. And you might be thinking, but why should I care about Bluey? In fact, why do you, grown man, care about Bluey? And I'd say to that, fair, but also, it's Australian. And I can't tell you how rare it is to find Australian TV that's genuinely good. And then how even more rare it is to have that series make it out internationally and catch on fire. After a lifetime of American and UK shows and movies on my TV screens, Bluey has taken over, and I'm all here for it. So I have to celebrate the very, very limited success of Australian-made content right now. I mean, legit, it almost never happens. We have some good actors, but not content necessarily. And I mean, genuinely, it might be for little kids, but this thing actually slaps. Like, it's so good. The episodes go for 7 minutes, and yet in that 7 minutes, they develop so much. They do so much. So much character growth, so much narrative progression, to the point that even amongst adults, the show's been wildly popular. Hell, there's a thriving subreddit for it. And when I took a look down that subreddit, a lot of the posters didn't even seem to have children at all to watch it with. It just became one of those top tier kids shows that are just fun for anybody to watch. And it's definitely turned into one of those shows where a fair few of the jokes are going to go over kids' heads. Like, they'll still laugh at them. Because I remember doing that kind of stuff too, laughing at the jokes I didn't get with stuff like Shrek. I'd laugh at the more advanced jokes, but I wouldn't get them. E.g. the Duloc compensating for something joke. No chance I understood that when I was little and saw the film for the first time, but I still enjoyed it. So, Bluey's managing to keep multiple audience brackets engaged with the show while still fulfilling the ultimate goal, which is to entertain preschoolers. And that's a hard thing to accomplish. And the results are speaking for themselves. Worldwide phenomenon, reportedly worth about $2 billion, and in 2023 it was apparently the second most streamed TV show in the US, which is usually looked at as the biggest market worldwide for this sort of stuff, and is definitely the biggest English-speaking market in terms of money, and was only behind Suits. And Suits is having a massive resurgence in popularity right now, so that's not too shabby if you ask me. And the fact that there doesn't seem to be a massive subsection of adult haters either, like many other kids shows have, means I think the results speak for themselves. And so I figured, screw it, I want to talk about Bluey. And more specifically, I want to talk about the latest, mega episode they did. Usually the episodes go for 7 minutes, and those 7 minutes are usually great, but it limits the way in which the creators can tell their story. You can't go for a longer style story or a longer format story that interweaves a whole lot of different characters and story threads because of the time limit. And so, this was very much a divergence from the formula. 28 minutes. And from what I understand, I could be wrong, it's sort of serving as maybe a bit of a dry run for a potential movie, which, yeah. Does anybody else hear the sound of film and TV executives rubbing their hands together in glee? I can almost smell the piles of money that a film like this would generate. Like I said, it's the second most streamed show of 2023. If they released this as a digital film, as in a streaming exclusive on Disney Plus or something like that, it would be huge. One of the biggest releases of the year, I reckon. But a cinematic release in theaters? I think it could gross some serious money. Like, the show is so popular, it's absurd at times. So yeah, I think it could crack $1 billion. Maybe. But I still think this is definitely going to give them the confidence in making a movie and ensuring that kids are still going to enjoy it. But that brings me to the episode itself. For the newer folks, often when there's a show that I enjoy, I'll do scene-by-scene breakdowns of the episodes. And so, Bluey's making its debut. Probably be a one-off, if we're being honest. But for once in my life, I was feeling some Australian pride with this thing going viral. So yeah, this is the sign. Okay, so we start off the episode in the backyard of their house, where Bandit's playing with Bingo on the swings. And I gotta say, because I've never talked about this series before publicly, Bandit has got to be the greatest dad in the history of kids TV, right? Like,
I've got bum worms.
I feel like the majority of cartoon dads are genuinely lazy and mean, and honestly, seem to dislike being parents a lot of the time.
Oh, it's always something, isn't it? First I have to drive your pregnant mother to the hospital so she can give birth to you, and now this!
Welcome to my childhood. This dude feels different. Does anybody else ever watch stuff like this and be like, oh, I wish my parents were like this? But yeah, anyway, turns out they're going to be hosting the wedding of Bandit's older brother Rad and Chili's best friend Frisky. And they're going to be hosting it in their backyard where the two met. Jeez. Their house must be one of those really nice looking heritage listed properties or something like that, because otherwise, Imagine hosting it in some random suburban backyard. Yeah, I know they met there, but still. Also, bold move, hosting a wedding in the backyard like a day before you're meant to sell the house and hand it over. Like, imagine buying this house and then you turn up and the previous owners have trashed the joint since the inspection. It just feels needlessly reckless, right? Anyway, the sheepdog couple that want to check out the house, they've arrived with a realtor to inspect the property, and the first thing they say is, oh, it doesn't have a pool. I do feel like this is where, I don't know, maybe the writers showed their age just a touch. Like, this would be listed on one of those big websites that people use to look for properties. Domain, realestate.com. Those are the two big ones in Australia. There's no chance that this presumably young couple that wants a pool in their yard would not use the very easy to use website to filter out all the houses in their price range and area that don't have a pool. Hell, I mean, do people even contact real estate agents anymore to show them houses unless they've already checked them out online and have an idea about this specific house? Surely people don't still walk into the agency and say, what have you got? Or look at the pictures that are stuck on the window, right? It just feels weird. Anyway, the story thread is that Bluey doesn't want to move away to a different city, neither does her mum Chili, or their dad Bandit, but they've been lured there by the promise of a higher paying job. Honestly, been there. Exact same scenario played out for me when I was a kid, so this got me right in the feels. Although that being said, my parents were not very sympathetic to me about it. They were very, very excited to move cities. Oh, not me feeling jealous of the life of cartoon dogs and their bond with their parents. No, not at all. At school, Bluey reveals to her friends that she's going to be moving away, and she's never going to see any of them ever again. To be a dramatic 7-year-old, although she is probably right. And the whole class starts crying, which in turn unlocked even more nostalgia for me, reminded me of those days of mass crying fits in class. Maybe not when I was 7, but like 3 or 4, and one kid would cry, and the rest of their friendship group would start to cry, they'd join in, it would be nightmarish. This show, it really does manage to latch on to the weirdest parts of my memory, to be so relatable in the most obscure of ways. And so the teacher at the school reads a story, which pretty much tells the kids, what happens, happens. You need to roll with the punches pretty much. And I gotta ask, who are the inspirations behind some of these teachers that we see on TV? Like, I never had anybody near this supportive of me when I went through school, and that's primary school and high school and university realistically. I mean, here are some of my greatest hits. My grade 6 teacher told us that using deodorant will 100% give us Alzheimer's. My partner's year 2 teacher threatened to cut off her tongue using the paper guillotine. And then, of course, there was that time that my soccer coach was a sex pest who tried to marry a 16-year-old girl and got busted for like 7 years or something like that. And yet, on TV, I'm always seeing these wonderful teachers and whatnot. What's going on? But then again, my kindergarten teachers, as in preschool teachers for some of you, they were very nice. But anyway, enough of that. We gotta talk Bluey. They sell the house. Literally nobody else seems to be on board with this. And look, if you ask me, if your wife, days away from moving cities, bursts into tears and flees the room at the prospect of moving house and cities away from your whole family and friend group, I don't think the extra money's gonna fix that. But yeah, the next day they're all setting up for the wedding and it's all cute and whatnot, and Stripe, the younger brother of the group, who seems to be a nice guy but isn't really the most competent of souls, accidentally causes wedding day drama when he says that Rad is expecting Frisky to move to Western Australia. Which, well, honestly, he works on an oil rig, we know that. And having just Google Street Viewed my way into where the Western Australian oil towns are, yeah, I would also be pretty pissed off. I'll stay in Brisbane, thanks. Yeesh. Sorry if you live in one of those places, but yikes. Anyway, whilst that's going on, Bluey's cousins, being like 4 and 3 or whatever, convince her that the only way for Bandit to successfully sell the house is if the sign stays in the ground. So if they remove the for sale sign, well, legally, the contract must be null and void. No sale. And you know what? I also would have probably thought something quite stupid like this when I was a little kid. So this is also very nostalgic. And so Frisky comes out to remove the sign for Bluey. She gets sidetracked by a phone call from Rad, to whom she'd left an angry voicemail for. And in under 20 seconds, I counted this, she rages at him, kicks over the garden gnome, poor Jeremy.
Sorry, mate.
Jeremy, no!
Hangs up on Rad and decides to call off the wedding before speeding off in her car and leaving the kids to explain things to everybody else. How old is this woman? The wiki says Bandit's like 40 or 40 something. Chili is of a similar age. We know that from a flashback. She went to school with Frisky, so that means Frisky's got to be like 40-ish as well, right? And she's acting like this at 40? Jeez, running off and being overly dramatic? Making everybody's day harder as a result? Frisky, pull your head in, mate. Jeez.
Poor Jeremy.
And so Chili has to go off with all 4 of the girls, Supermum over here, to save the day, whilst everybody else is at home, none the wiser. Except for Rad. And so the adventure begins. They get pulled over by the cops, they grab watermelon juice, they clown on Uncle Rad, Muffin, because of course it's Muffin, spills her juice, they get into a high-speed chase with Frisky, they stop for a toilet break, then they have another stop when there's a butterfly in the car. Man, Chili is really just based. Meanwhile, my mum, when I was a kid, Mum, can we stop? I need to wee. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. And then somehow it's my fault when I wet myself, and the anecdote gets brought up to shame me and make me look like a weirdo every chance they get. I mean, come on, I was only 23. But yeah, a good mum and a good aunt, although probably should be supervising the 2 or 3-year-old that's going into a public toilet alone a bit more closely, right? They then find Frisky at the lookout. She has a bit of a meltdown in front of the 7-year-old, which is, that's certainly a choice. But yeah, she has a meltdown. And then Chili also has a bit of a meltdown about having to leave their home and family and life. And I tell you what, this better be a massive step up in terms of his salary. Like, a massive step up, because this feels nightmarish. Rad then arrives. It's all happy. Off they go. The wedding's back on. And really, this whole next 10 minutes of the wedding, it's just very wholesome. Loved it. But at the same time, it gave off massive series finale vibes. Like, not season finale, series finale, as in no more after this. Almost as if this was the original ending to the show and they intended to never make any more. But since it's gotten so profitable, well, the lure of the big green pulls you back in. I mean, maybe making multiple movies would just be a great idea. You never know. Anyway, the big takeaways from this scene is that Chili's sister, who had a very sad infertility storyline, is miraculously pregnant. Bob, the paternal grandfather of the family, was in fact not dead this whole time. Despite being MIA since season 1, he was in India instead, finding himself. Late life crisis? My uncle had one of those where he went overseas alone and his wife stayed home and chilled. He came back miserable and he's never quite been the same since. No real relevance to the story at all, but it did bring that to mind. Anyway, Frisky and Rad announced that they're staying in Brisbane, which makes the dilemma even worse for Bandit and Chili. Because here are the facts, yeah? They move to, I assume Sydney. They get more money, better life for the girls, in terms of money and things they can buy. But in Brisbane, they already have the house, their childhood home. They have 2 uncles and 3 aunts, 2 cousins already, another on the way and maybe more in the future. They have Bob and Chris, Bandit's parents, and they have Mort, Chili's dad. Plus all their friends and whatnot from living your whole life in the same place.
No worries, Bluey. I shouldn't have let my guard down.
Money is nice and all, but this feels like a massive mistake. It's not like they're living in crushing poverty. Trust me, people have sort of figured out what suburb they probably live in. They are not poor. But of course, the house has already been sold, too bad, and they're moving out all their stuff. I guess either to put into storage or to drive to their new house. And considering the ending of this episode, I really hope it was to storage and they hadn't signed a contract, they hadn't bought a new house, because otherwise, uh-oh. Anyway, turns out that Bingo, who up to this point in the episode was completely fine with selling the house, did not realise that this would mean she has to leave. And so she has a meltdown too. She cries, tries to lift out the sign, she fails. She's comforted by Bluey, who then tells her the story of the farmer to cheer her up. The lucky, unlucky farmer that Calypso talked about earlier in the episode. And I felt like this part was just so clever right here at the end, like actually top tier writing, tying the story back into the episode with all the good and the bad luck the family endured, which in turn leads into the final scene. Stripe accidentally causes Frisky to go AWOL, which is bad luck, but if he hadn't, they wouldn't have gone on the car trip. They never would have gone to the juice place, they never would have found that coin, and since they bought juice, this meant they had to stop when Muffin spilled hers, which in turn let them see Frisky drive past, let them chase her a bit, which got them into the exact right place they needed to be for when Socks needed to use the toilet, close to the park where they get the butterfly into the car, which leads them to the sign for the lookout, which leads them to the lookout itself, and led to the coin being left in the binocular machine, which let the sheepdogs that bought the house see a different house with a pool that's for sale. And so they cancel the purchase of the healer's home, and they let Bandit reconsider everything based on what he thinks is best for the family. And so here begins a truly epic finale, a final scene for the ages, like so damn awesome. The music, just, yeah, everything. I loved it. The epic moment where Bandit rips out the for sale sign, decides they're not leaving at all. Everybody runs to him, they're crying, it's all happy. They eat fish and chips inside with only their rug. Oh, I'm man enough to admit that I tear up at that scene every single time because I've rewatched this episode multiple times. And if you don't, you actually have no heart. Sorry. Seriously, what the hell? I swear when I was a kid, they never put quite this much effort into entertaining me. Bluey's just on another level. I swear. Like, just epic. And so, yeah, that's the end of the episode. It might be my one and only foray into the world of Bluey, but I enjoyed myself, and it probably was the perfect time for it. And so, yeah, not much else to say. These have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode, if you've watched it? And if you haven't watched it, why haven't you watched it? But if you have watched it, what did you think? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.